Welcome back, everyone, and round three already. Already had a couple of teams with a bye, already a few teams undefeated or with the full competition points. A couple not having a win yet, and they're starting to get a bit nervous. And straight away, Luke, let's dive straight into it. And one of those teams is the Parramatta Eels, and that's the Thursday night contest, Manly at Brookie. It's the big old rivalry we get to see, Manly versus Para. How's your weekend watching league and what are you looking forward to in this clash?
Yeah, it was an interesting weekend watching the footy because I actually got to watch a good majority of it. Had a bit of
Yeah,
a cruisy Sunday and probably the two games. Not really that I had to, dive myself into too much. I caught the last of the Tigers game, but no, it was interesting. I think there was a few teams that carried on the tune, a couple teams that their wake up call was given in round one and they rose to the occasion in rounds two, but there's still a lot of intrigue and yeah, still all the same thoughts though from the round one. Not sold on those heavyweights, as we talked about in last week's episode. But yeah, in terms of this clash, like we said, one of those teams that didn't respond was the Eels. And one team that obviously was trending really upwards was the Seagulls. And it is going to be interesting to see how teams respond off the bye. And this is kind of the first evidence of it. Obviously, we're the Dragons, but that was their first game. And I don't think it really counts as well. It's not like they had to come off any momentum or anything like that. So yeah, for me, yeah, it's tough for the Eels because they should have won the Storm game. They were tipped to win the Sharks game, and now they're coming up against the Seagulls. Where if you looked at the draw on paper, you think that's all right. A lot of people will have the Seagulls kind of tipped either just outside their eight or even the bottom four. Like I think I had them about 12th or 13th, but Jesus, we know, like, obviously Tommy's the X factor, but when everyone else is ticking, and at the moment, they're all ticking. But still, end of the day, where this game might come down to, and what I've outlined is the halfback battle in Moses and Cherry Evans. I think they're the most, what would say, the most, opinion sway on these halfbacks the most out of any halfback combo. You can kind of say that they're kind of each state's double ganging in a way, like obviously Cherry Evans kind of cemented in the spot, but that has a lot to do with having less competition for his position, where obviously Moses has to battle with Cleary, and also you got Hines coming through the ranks as well. But yeah, they have their great days and then they have their not so great games in the big settings, I should say. But for me, I really pinpointed executing and putting teams on the back foot and putting the pressure on the other teams. And that's with my forced dropouts and 40-20s combined, which half will have the most out of them, because I think it's really key, their kicking game, and making sure that even if, they don't score off point or score off a good set, that they can just kind of keep that pressure going. And we've had games, especially with Moses, where he might do a couple on the full or just make some boneheaded plays or not get himself involved. And we know Cherry Evans is kind of the same as well, where it can look a bit clunky. So I'm just really seeing which player really ultimately steps up and kind of owns, like, who's the better seven at the moment. Like, for me, I'm always switching them around. I like Moses more as a player, but then Cherry Evans pulls out stuff like he did at Origin last year, and then he's got got probably a little bit more better resume. So for this matchup, I'm actually leaning towards Power to just do it, because at the end of the day, my logic is on free start Parramatta Eels. I think they'll get it done. And I'm hoping the fellow Power fan will jump on board. But yeah, there's not much to it. I just think Moses is class, and I think he's just due a good game.
Yeah. So you're locking in Moses for your stat war?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely, mate.
I'm not confident being a Para fan. I'm a bit over the start of the season, to be honest. Already, it's just been pretty disappointing. 2 games, as you said, we should have won, and I think if our halves stepped up a bit more than they did, we probably win both of those. And I've been a little bit disappointed early on. I know Moses is in his contract talk and says it's not affecting him. Well, I'd call bullshit a bit. I reckon it is affecting him, and I think from his displays so far, I know he got a couple of tries last week, but they were really sort of support plays and nothing really spectacular that got him those tries. Cherry Evans' round one performance was nuts. He was all over the shop. He was everywhere where the ball was, scored 3, set up, I think, another 1 or 2, had his kicking game on. And that Brookie Manly's a different beast at the moment, especially while Tommy's there. Really dangerous game for Parramatta to start that dreaded season 0-3 and potentially be the last remaining team to register a win, depending on how results go for this week. For the stat ward, Cherry versus Moses. I'll go Cherry. I'll go different early on. By the way, guys, early on I'm behind by a few, so I've got to try and catch up a little bit here. It's a long season, but I wouldn't mind getting 1 or 2 back this week. Off that one, yeah, I'll go Cherry, and I think Manly will be just too strong in the end, unfortunately. I hope you're right though.
Sorry about that, mate. I think one key thing you did mention was that contract thing with Moses, which is a very good point. Be interesting how they respond after the news about the contract extension with Brad Arthur. So yeah. I believe that was quite odd timing, but I think we might look back at it in hindsight and think, oh, that's maybe what they needed, a bit of certainty around what's happening, a bit of trust around the joint. So yeah, at first I was like odd, but now when it's kind of stewing on it, for me, this is kind of prediction that, yeah, it's just, I just have a feeling. I just have a gut feeling. There's not much analysis, but I think, look, at the end of the day, Parramatta did make the grand final last year. They've still got the key players there. I think they'll have a good game out of nowhere for me, and I'm just predicting that will be round 3.
Well, you're beating me at the moment, so I hope you're right. I'll be happy to lose this one to you. Next game up, first Friday game, and it's an interesting one. Knights versus the Dolphins. Newcastle's first home game of the year, but geez, they've lost some troops. And I know just a quick one, guys. I've been flat out today, Wednesday, and Luke's been kind enough to do all the stat wars for all the games for us. So I'll probably start with him most of these games, so he can get his out first. But yeah, he's got the Supercoach points for the back 3 of both the Knights and the Dolphins, and just going to quickly bring up the back 3 and what they're looking like for both teams. So at fullback for Newcastle, you got Lockie Miller, and on the wings you got Hymel Hunt and Dominic Young, which I know a lot of Knights supporters, I've seen in their chats and stuff, are still not happy that Marju's not back yet, and not in that wing spot ahead of Hymel Hunt. So just keep on late mail there. There might be a late change. I'm getting told by the Knights it was in an injury, which he should be pretty much fully recovered with now. So just look out, because I think for this Supercoach points, that could make a big difference having Marju back and what he can do. For the Dolphins, obviously the Hammer is in great form. Then you got Asako and you got Tessie New at the wings as well. So off you go, Luke.
Yeah, for me, just like straight away, Hamiso is one of those players that intrigues me. And sometimes I have to just hold back the excitement and think, okay, let's look at the modern day fullback. And Hamiso, there's a few boxes he doesn't tick. But in terms of we just got to sometimes be honest, like he's a freakish talent and they make it work. And so far, he has made it work. I think also he is very young. So when he's had those stints at the Cowboys, he is, like you said, young. He's also just hasn't consistently been there as well. And Drinkwater, when he had this time to be there, just took over. So him and at the end of the day, he's just got natural instinct. And there's just players in his backfield excitement. The one, obviously, Hamiso that we just touched on. Jermaine Asako was the rookie of the year. You think about where he started rookie of the year and predict how he would have trended. We would have been trending him. He would have been a top 5 winger for me, the way he started off. And I think we're not saying top 5 winger, don't get me wrong, but his little bits, it just looks like he's enjoying his footy again. And you look at his physique, and I just really enjoy him. I remember watching him live, Kiwis versus England. It was in Christchurch. And for me, he was the body in terms of physical attributes that stood out the most that day. And even when he just stepped off his foot, and I think I'm just really excited about watching how he progresses. Tessie New's got a bit of X factor about him, and Dominic Young, he's a talent as well. And Hymel Hunt, like you said, look, at the end of the day, Hymel Hunt, like if there's an injury in the, like I'm not saying he's going to be playing for Queensland, but when it was getting really thin there, his name was kind of getting brought up at some stages. I don't think people quite remember that. Not saying he's the best player in the world, but yeah, so for me, there's just a little bit of youth and excitement here. And Greg Marshu, he's one guy I'm predicting to be a breakout player of the year. So for me, when I just looked at these two teams and I looked at those matchups, the say if everyone else is evens each other out, I just think there could be a game-winning play from one of these back three, and that could be in the run meters department. That could be tackle breaks, and for me, I just can't go past the Dolphins here with most super coach points. It will be interesting if Marshall comes in, but then he was going to be his first game back coming off injury. But yeah, I'm just backing Hamiso to be the man. I think he's going to continue his form, especially when we don't have the likes of Kalen Ponga kind of creating space for his outside backs as well. So for me, Hamiso's there, especially when he's getting used to those combinations with O'Sullivan and Katoa as well.
Yeah, I've really liked the Hammer so far, and I actually picked him up in my Supercoach team from the start. I was pretty confident that he'd be able to pick it up. And I know there's still people out there who's questioning that and saying, don't get him, he's a trap, blah, blah, blah. But tell you what, after 2 games, I'm happy I've got him. He's in that centre wing spot. So chewing up some points. And yeah, I'm really happy.
A lot of experts said it too. So I went off him too because, and it kind of happened because we had that little snippet with him at the Cowboys last year. Yeah, he's at fullback and he was low price, but he didn't get the point. So yeah, I was the one that avoided him too, and now I'm regretting that decision. I'm more of a fantasy guy, but we use Supercoach for this. But yeah, it's a decision that I've come to rue.
He was the criticism of him, he wasn't in the game enough, and he wasn't the key stats or the base stats they like to talk about in Supercoach. And when I look back at it, for the Cowboys, especially last year, he didn't really start many games anyway. Like he was always sort of coming on, playing a role and that sort of thing. So I've loved him so far this year. I think he's been everywhere, and he's really good. One thing he's really, really good at, and I've been really impressed with so far, is how he can read an opposition's kicking game. He just seems to always be there on either the first or second bounce or getting the kick on the full. And you can't coach that. You can't teach players that. That's just game awareness. And he's obviously studied it enough and knows sort of what teams are up to. He's just always there. But for the Supercoach points for this back three, I'm actually going to go different. I'm going to go the Knights. And the reasoning for that is I think the Dolphins will win. I think the Dolphins will get this done. I think Knights have lost too many key players. But the Knights back 3 from 1 will have a lot of pressure to get a lot of the work done, where I think Dolphins do a bit more hard yards with their forwards and that and let their wingers off the hook slightly, and then more of the sort of finishes. I think Tessie New for mine might let the other two down in terms of Supercoach points. So I just think the Knights overall with Miller, Hymo Hunt or Marju, whichever they end up with come game day, and then Dominic Young, they should get enough points between them to get the job done in that one for mine. So
yeah, that's fair. I'm probably more backing the Dolphins just to probably have a little slight edge and probably just lead some opportunities for those back threes to pile on a bit of tries, and especially with Amiso being in try scoring form too. So that's where I'm leaning. Your points are very logical though, mate.
Yeah, but you know what? You know what tries are worth. So if the Dolphins do run away with it a bit, I'm going to be worried. So the next game, and I tell you what, it's almost fight night. Remember the semis last year, and the first week of the finals, South Roosters versus South. We'll get that in the correct order, otherwise Roosters will get Nick Polides will call us up and get angry. It's definitely a home game for the Roosters, and I know what we do here. I want to quickly. I've never done this yet on these podcasts, viewers. I know we like to pick on the stats, and this is what we're called Stat Wars. But for this one, I'm going to ask if we can change the rules slightly or bend them, just because of how last year went. Can we just predict which team will get the most sin bins? I think that's fantastic. I reckon that's going to be. I know where you've gone here, and it's a really big matchup, that one. The Trell versus Manu one, but I think this is a little bit of fun, and just because I think it's going to be a hotly contested. South players are already in the media talking up, saying, "Yeah, we're not going to back down," blah blah blah. So I can't wait for this game. I'm almost more excited for this game for once in my own team, just with how we've started. But I reckon most sin bins, and you know what, the Roosters for mine don't handle it too well when teams are in their face. So I'm going to say the Roosters will get more with the likes of Radley. Jared Weir-Hargraves is back, and add Brandon Smith to the mix. He can be a bit loosey-goosey, and he's got some injuries at the moment. So if they start targeting his ribs, he's not going to be too happy. if they had Nathan Brown as well, who they just recently signed, and he was coming off the bench, there'd be an absolute lock for mine for this. But yeah, I'll go the Roosters will get probably the more. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up with 3 at least.
Well, I tell you what, you've come up with the call of the podcast so far this year with that, changing it up because I love it. I'll just touch on that matchup. So the matchup we're going to focus on was Manu versus Latrell, and even I wanted to pair them up. Obviously not in the same position, but obviously there's history there, and I think for me that was a bit of that. It was a bit like you were saying. It was an aggression battle. It's like I almost didn't do a step, but just who's going to have the better game. And I didn't even want super coach, but I just think tackle breaks and line breaks was my key indicator because I think they approach this game differently, those two. And like you said, there's a lot of
find each other on the field as well. They always find each other.
Yeah, and your stat change has kind of addressed my biggest thing. There is aggression, there is feel. It's the biggest rivalry in the game. Yes, we go through patches where the Broncos and Cowboys are hotly contested. But in terms of the history and the games that these guys have produced, you can't deny it. And yeah, I'm gonna go with you. And I just had to double check that JWH was back. Lock it in. Definitely Roosters. And also a key out for the Roosters. Obviously, he's not going to be playing the majority of the season, is Angus Crichton. In terms of just that cooler head. Look, it's you got Lindsay Collins, you got Brandon Smith, you got this young guys in there as well. Young Egan Butcher as well. Yeah. Egan Butcher's got a little bit of that. Yeah. That bit of mongrel about him as well. So for me, I think that's a really good call. You've obviously got your main leaders for the Rabbitohs that have a bit more of that and Cody Walker. But yeah, I like it here. And ultimately, I actually think it's going to be key for why the Rabbitohs might get the win here too. So yeah, I'll lock in the Roosters, but the Rabbitohs to get the Chockies.
I'll lock in Roosters for both. I feel like this is the game that gets the Roosters going a little bit. You mentioned the second row, they're a bit depleted. Like I know people talk about Parramatta and stuff, but they got no Crichton and no Tupanua as well, Satilli. So he's out still with an injury. So I don't know. I'm not too sure. I think he's out for quite a bit still as well. I don't know if he's back anytime soon. I'll have to double check that. But yeah, they're a bit depleted. Next game, Titans versus the Storm. And the stat for this one, the stat wars we're doing is the Storm props versus the Titans props. And I'm guessing this is just the starting props. We'll just
starting props.
So Titans, you got Fodawaker comes on the starting side and Tino Sawamala. And for the Storm, you've got Kama Kamika's back, Tui, and then you got Christian Welsh as well. So or Welch, he likes to be called. So pretty. I tell you what, like when you look at the battles on it, I think both teams have a couple of injuries, but 4 really big name props who do a job week in, week out. So it's a fantastic battle you've pointed out there. In terms of the prop pairing who gets the most run meters combined, I feel like between Fodawaker and Tino, they might get through a bit more work. I think Kamika is just coming back from his injury or what he's from, so he's going to be a bit underdone slightly. Was it suspended or injury he's coming back from?
I was going to ask you the exact same thing.
I feel like it's an
because
injury.
I know Tui's had his wrongdoings in the past, and I think I was getting that muddled too. I do believe it's injury.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had that thought about what happened. Yeah, it was definitely last season. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was injury.
Yeah, so just on that factor, I'm going to lock in the Titans pairing. I'm going to lock the Storm in to win. I think they've welcomed back enough big guns to get the win in a close one up here on the Gold Coast. But yeah, I think the Titans pairing, just because they'll probably get a bit more game time once you put 2 into the mix, I think the Titans pairing get this done.
I'm going to go with the Storm. No surprise being a Storm fan. In both here. So I think Storm are going to win, and I do believe that the forwards will get the job done. Logically, I'm going against a lot of logic this week. It's just more of a gut feeling thing. Ultimately, I just see the game. I do have confidence that the Storm will win this one comfortably. I actually don't think there's too many reasons why I should have that feeling, especially when I'm looking down and you still got Wishart there, and we just know what happened. They just lost against the Bulldogs team that got pumped to the Sea Eagles. But I just think that Welch is going to obviously he's just going to be finding his feet.
It's pumped by Dragons. Sorry.
In terms of this when the Storm got thumped by the Bulldogs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But like you said, both teams are coming off loss, so yeah, that's points in I should be defending my team. But yeah, I am a
You
big
also
Tories.
welcome back Tarek Sims, which is a big one if he ends up
Yeah,
playing. So I like that
huge,
addition.
huge. And I just think Harry Grant's going to take advantage of that middle as well. And I think if those big boys are rolling off him as well, so he's actually a huge reason why I think you can't question Harry Grant's kind of momentum at the moment. So I
Yeah.
think for me, he's the edge, and I think he's just going to give him enough opportunities at the moment. But yeah, Tino's probably the big reason why. Like if you were to put the odds into this stat, I think the Titans would actually be favoured, and I think because Tino is, yeah, he's can be the heart and soul even when his team isn't winning games. There's always a good chance he's still leading the meters even if he's on the losing side. So I will go after Storm, just because I believe that they will be getting a bit more go for just because they will be outclassing the Titans, and Harry Grant will be the main man because of that.
Got a few early on different. This is going to be a big week, and I can feel it already for this Stat Wars. Cowboys versus the Warriors the next game, and I think that I tell you what, the Cowboys. When you first looked at their draw, you go, yeah, they've got a pretty soft run early on. So I think they'll want to make sure they start. They ran into a really good Broncos side last week. I don't think anyone will deny that. But I think for the way the Cowboys are at the moment, they would have wanted to win that game and get on a bit of a winning run. So you've got here more meters for either Cotter or Fanua Blake, which is an interesting one because it would depend. I think this is a big one depending on will Cotter play the 80 minutes or not. Because yeah, I'm not 100% sure he has been over the last few weeks. He's been getting a rest, I'm pretty sure. So
I'm just checking it now because it was funny. I was just thinking about it when you were thinking. I was just looking back at Broncos versus Cowboys and just looking at his minutes. So just give me one tick. I'll
yeah,
just
you're right.
weird.
I'll keep dribbling while you do that.
Yeah,
So um,
56 minutes he played, so he didn't play. He did miss over a quarter of the game.
how many? Sorry.
He played 56 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, wow. For Cotter as well, that's quite a decent amount to be missing, and especially and I thought because they lost Gilbert in the off season, they would have relied even more on perhaps Ruben Cotter, but maybe seems like that hasn't really affected his minutes at all. Now with James Tarmo, they're probably giving him some minutes of Cotter's, because Cotter's got a motor, no doubt. In terms of the stat war, more meters just because it's up there in Cowboy territory, and in the heat. I think Cotter will get this one done. So lock me in for Cotter and a Cowboys win.
They played the same amount of minutes for Noah Blake and Cotter. And for Noah Blake got 144 meters last week, which was, I think, about 20 more than Cotter. So yeah, no, very interesting. But I think ultimately that's a really good point in the heat. And I think Cotter, honestly, in terms of playing above your size, your weight, he is number one for me in terms of if you look up in the dictionary, that's that player. I've actually predicted Cotter to be the front row of the year this season. I just think he's just got that statement to prove. And I think, like we said at the moment, I don't know when, I'm not predicting this will be the game, but I think he will just get an increase in meters. And I think his game fitness will just get better and better and better. And honestly, that's one of his better weapons. He's just a machine, Cotter. I'm so impressed, but I just love the contrast of front rows here. Like at the end of the day, they're a lot different, but
Yeah.
you look at their stat sheet and you think actually they get through quite similar work, as we know there with the 56 minutes. So yeah, pretty crazy. But for me, I'm probably not the biggest Fanua Blake fan. Now I rate him. I'm not saying that. Like I think, yeah, when people say he's one of the top 10, top 5 props, like I understand that. But yeah, it is more just I'm a huge Cotter fan, and yeah, we just go through waves with Fanua Blake. Some not his fault. It can be team success. It can be also injury. But for me, I think in these conditions, I think Cotter is just got a statement to prove, and he just seems one of those players when coming off a loss, he's just going to be one of your best players on the park.
Yeah, two trips in a row for the Warriors across the ditch as well, and going up to Townsville might
Good
not be
point.
too kind for him. So, next game, the mighty Brisbane Broncos at the moment, they're definitely mighty. They're playing some really good footy against the Dragons, who surprised a lot. And I'm glad you've picked out what you have. I'll let you start with this one. I'm really glad you picked out this matchup.
The old centers here with the Broncos and the Dragons. So we're going on super coach points now. I wonder at the start of the season, if you were say, or frame it this way, out of these four centers, who would be who would you put probably at the bottom?
Probably Sully.
Sully, yeah, and then probably where would you have Farnworth? Or did you rate Farnworth coming into this season?
I've always rated Farnworth
Yeah.
to the point where I wanted him. I wanted Parra to really go hard at him and look at signing him. To be honest, I think he's a great signing for the Dolphins, which gives them a headache next year, which we can get into another day. But between him and Hammer for fullback, I don't think that's as clear cut as what the media are making it out to be at the moment, especially. But I think just between that, like for mine in the Broncos outfit, and if I look at all their 17, the player for mine who needs to start stepping up more is Katoni Staggs. I think he's
Mm.
been pretty disappointing this year. I know they've been winning, but I heard someone else say during the week on one of the podcasts I listened to, I think it may have been on SEN or something, the radio. I think it was Matthew Johns actually said Farnworth really impressed him because if the ball doesn't go to him, he goes to go and look for the ball and get involved with the game. Where for Stags, if the ball
Stags
doesn't
doesn't do
come
it.
to him, he's happy with that. He'll just stay on his center and no worries. But Stags has all the weaponry in the world, and we've seen that at stages whenever he ticks into that mind frame and he goes and he wants the ball, but he's hardly ever in that mood. Where Farnworth for mine, anytime he sort of plays, at least has a moment in each game and I
I
really
always,
like that for Farnworth.
I always find it hard with the centers, like who's that to blame though? Is that the Tony Staggs to blame, or is that the coach? Because I'm always one of those guys. I always pick out the
Even the
centers or ones
playmakers
that
to a
are,
certain extent. So,
yeah, and especially when he does have Reynolds on his side as well. Like, let's just get him. Like, wouldn't we rather Reynolds creating space? But I do like it. I'm not definitely, against you there. But it's just one of those things where I don't think it's always the full story. I was getting really excited for Staggs this season because he revealed that last season he was carrying a bit of injury.
yeah.
And then in hindsight, you definitely think, makes a lot of sense. So, but yeah, I've been a little bit, just he's been a bit gun shy with Farnworth's just come out of the blocks. And,
Yeah.
I think there's doubts over his playmaking ability, especially if the Dolphins potentially want to turn him into a fullback. But as a centre, yes, you need to be able to make reads in terms of your passing game. But look, you can survive without it. And at the moment, like you said, he's just getting in there and getting involved. One person also, I think Zach Lomax is the one to kind of put yourself in that Stags basket at times. Yeah, and Sully had a great season last year. I think he's one of those guys that you always wanted more, but I think he actually had a pretty consistent season last year. But at the end of the day, these guys, why I'm really excited about this pairing is these guys can produce offense by themselves.
Yeah.
But for me, it's going to be the Broncos, and it is going to be because they've got opportunities to have offense kind of provided for them as well. And then they're just going to have more chances. And Farnworth at the moment is going to be the reason why I'm going to go here. Go with the Broncos to win the Supercoach battle, the Stat Wars battle, I should say. I'd be very surprised actually if he doesn't get over the line. So that's a good tip for you guys. Thank you later. But yeah, I've just been impressed by him, and I hope this is the game where obviously the Broncos are favoured. The first, I know they were kind of, we had a debate last week, or not a debate, but the odds were slightly changed in the Cowboys' favour last week. But now this is definitely a favour. This is the matchup where obviously they've been winning anyway, but they are meant to win this game. I see the Broncos winning here, and hopefully Stags can get over for meat pie as well.
Yeah, I'm the same. I lock in the Broncos pairing for this one, and I'll lock in the Broncos to win this quite comfortably, in my opinion. I think this will be the Dragons back down to earth after proving the media we're quick to shoot fire. Next game, second last one. We'll get through these last two pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Um, the Dogs and the Tigers. I think the less we say about the Tigers at the moment, the better. I think they've already been shot down enough all week, and I don't think we need to add to that. I think they've been abysmal, which is to say it nicely. Their only main man at the moment, Dewey, and this is the mention of Burton versus Dewey try and line break involvements. I'm just going Burton purely because the fact the Tigers just have nothing in attack at the moment. I can't see that changing in 1 week where the Dogs got a bit of confidence with their win against a depleted Storm lineup. I think that you've got to make sure everyone knows that they were pretty depleted. But look, they got the job done. And I think Burton slowly getting into a bit of form now with the new structure that Serrato's got there. So I'll lock in the Bulldogs for a win and Burton to win this one.
Bulldogs win. Dewey to get it for me.
Tigers bounce back.
Yeah, well, I also just think Burton, yeah, it's been an interesting start. I don't. What are your thoughts? Do you have an opinion on this game against the Storm? Because I was kind of reflecting on it today, and I didn't. My recollection's kind of gone to me. I was probably drowning in my own tears, but yeah,
He didn't
for
do
me,
much, to be honest. Like I didn't see him like I feel like definitely Manly he wasn't even in the game, and a lot of people say it's probably his worst game he's ever played. And I don't think he was in the game too much. Like, to be honest, I know Flanagan gets his critics, but I think he was more involved with the game last weekend than Burton was. Maybe I was seeing something else, but as you said, like when you think about the game, you don't really remember Burton, and it's hard to not because he's got the headgear and that. You sort of always
yeah.
see him with his towering bombs. So yeah, I didn't really notice him too much last week.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you say the Bulldogs beat the Storm 26-12, you're gonna say, "Oh, Doohy was the man of the match." Nah, like it, and that's the thing for me. But that's a credit to the rest of the Bulldogs team as well. They're getting points elsewhere too. Where at the end of the day, why I'm leaning towards Dewey is like we mentioned, he's everywhere. Doing the stat wars was the hardest one. Like my eyes just immediately went to Dewey. There was a assignment that wanted to do Epi v Mahoney as well, but I just want to kind of slow down on Epi at the moment and has, eased himself into form with the Tigers and just making sure like we understand what minutes he's getting distributed and all that stuff. And yeah, so for me, I just focused on Dewey here, and I'm going to lean towards Dewey. And I think the Bulldogs still have cracks in them. Oh, well, obviously they did. Obviously, they had a great one last week, but they're definitely no finished product. And I just think Dewey's. We saw in Tiger Town documentary as well. I'm a big fan of Dewey. I just love what he brings, and you cannot question his effort. And for me, I think there's going to be enough openings for him to have a few little moments here. So I'm going to lock in Dewey, and a lot of that does also come down from Bulldogs. Just a few more weapons out there to score some tries. So yeah, for me, yeah, I'm going to go Dewey.
The Doggies back to Belmore as well for this one, so they always sort of rise to the occasion when they're at Belmore. Last game, a bit of a Mac game for mine. I just can't get into the Raiders this year. Raiders versus the Sharks in Canberra, first home game for them. Got the battle of the hookers, and an interesting one, most run meters, which probably both are sort of more running happy hookers in the game. We see a lot of them like Hodgson and stuff who just quickly give it straight off to the playmakers, but these guys don't mind having a little bit of a skirt from dummy half or pushing the line. Look, tip the Sharks to win. Most run meters, I'll go Danny Levi, so I'll go the Raiders, get this one as well.
Yeah, I reckon I'll probably, if any, today I might have made an error here just because Tom Starling's also on the bench for the Raiders. But
yeah.
what I did think about this is Danny Levi, like ideally, if you talk about the new game and the impact of just like very offensive focus, obviously a few years ago it was a little bit more skewed in that direction. But you think Danny Levi, he's the perfect hooker because he loves to run. But I think there's a difference between running hookers and instinctive hookers. Now, Danny Levi is great, and like he's an NRL player. At the end of the day, he also represented the Kiwis a couple times, I believe. Yeah, pretty sure. And like he's got a lot of talent, and running is his focus. But sometimes he just runs, and like it's great, but it just seems like maybe it's not even selfish, but he's doing it to help his team. But there's better options out there.
That's up.
I'm very intrigued with Blake Brayley. Yeah, like I don't know his ceiling. Like we're gonna have this wait. I think Reece Robson's really taken first place in terms of who's gonna be next in line for Blues, but I wouldn't really, kind of put Brayley out of that conversation. I think for me, I've got the Sharks winning this contest. And I think Brayley is going to get the most meters. A lot does have to do with Levi to distribute the minutes distribution there. But I wouldn't be surprised if Brayley does get a line break or something here. I think there actually might be a reasonable advantage for the Sharks in the 4-pack, especially when the bench comes on as well. And also he's got more responsibility with Hines not there at the moment. So I'm gonna go Blake Brayley here, but yeah, a lot of it does have to do with Tom Starling come off the bench for the Raiders. What's Cameron McInnes been coming on at the moment? He's been coming on as
plays lock sort of role.
Yeah.
So he won't eat into his minutes. He hasn't been playing.
Yeah. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't needing my own words there. I thought so. I just wasn't too confident.
And I immediately regret going Levi, but I'll stick with him. I totally forgot about Tom Starling, but that's all good. Look, guys, that is all we've got time for this week. Another great weekend of footy. I think we've been spoilt so far with the games. First time I'm actually going to be cheering for a couple of Queensland sides. I really want to see the Dolphins and I really want to see the Broncos both win this weekend. So next weekend, we've got the Queensland derby between those two, both undefeated. I think the crowd will be massive if that happens. It probably already will be, but add a little bit extra spice to that new derby, new grudge match, which could see even some send-offs. We might have another Sydney one for next week. Who knows? But that's it, guys. Hopefully, Luke, you can watch some games again this weekend. Not too busy.
Now I've got the luckily I'm big into my UFC these days, but luckily it's an early one. It's in London this week, so I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, no, I'll be all sorted and always gonna make time for the footy.
Yeah, perfect. Alrighty, guys. Enjoy the weekend of footy. Keep up to date. I'm going to be clawing my way back. You watch. Go, Jenny Levi.